Hi, Sandy Moss again here from my closet, and I have some photographs today. I've been talking often about Northwest Coast Indians and Eskimos, and I brought in some photographs today that I've managed to find and purchase, and I'd like to just say a little bit about them because they're rather interesting photographs in their own way, and interesting people. The very first one is a picture of a chief of the Tlingit Indians, actually a branch of the Tlingit Indian group in northern British Columbia called the Taku. This is a Taku chief whose name I can't pronounce, but this was a picture taken in 1915, so a little over 100 years ago, and he's in his sort of fancy dress duds here that he's wearing. He's got a robe which has basically been woven from wool, and they use the wool from mountain goats in this Tlingit tribe to make these ceremonial robes, and he's wearing a crown that consists of bear claws and the horns from mountain goats, and his headdress has these long feeler type things on the top. These are the whiskers from sea lions that were used to adorn some of their clothes, and particularly their headdresses and hats, hunting hats, and so forth. So here's Chief of the Taku branch of the Tlingit Indians in his full-blown wardrobe in 1915. This next one has a pair of men. These are both males. The rounder face here looks a little femalish, but these are again important people. They again have a crown. This one is goat horn, has 3 goat horns, and the other one is wearing a sort of a tiara, which is made of grizzly bear or Alaskan brown bear claws. And this fellow is wearing a nose ring made out of ivory, which is something that they put on when they were really getting into their enhanced ceremonies. And these have a large emblem here, which in the Northwest Coast Indian groups is known as the thunderbird. This is a mythical bird which figures in a lot of their ceremonies, and a lot of in their various myths concerning the creation of humans. So these people aren't named, but they're clearly of the Tlingit tribe. This next one shows a pair of gentlemen, and these are quite interesting to me. Again, they're dressed in their ceremonial robes made of goat wool and woven with cedar bark and other pieces in some very, very fancy and highly stereotyped designs, which have particular meanings. And if you knew much about this, you would be able to pick out various creatures, mythical creatures, which are involved here. The hats are quite interesting. This fellow over here is wearing a hat that has a raven, their view of a raven sitting on the top of it. So this identifies this person as having what was known as the Raven Crest, or the Raven Clan. And on top of the raven's head, you can see the hat has 2 sort of tiers, 2 like layers of a cake, of a wedding cake. And this had a significance in that these people had ceremonies that they called potlatches, where they would have great parties and they would give material away, and your value depended in part on how generous you were to give various things away. And when a chief had a potlatch, that entitled him to have another tier put on the top of his hat. So this guy has 2 tiers, which means he sponsored 2 potlatch ceremonies. I was researching these things a little bit, and I came across a guy wearing exactly the same hat in a different picture. It was a different guy. And I also found pictures of other people wearing the same robes, and it seems like, at least in the early 1900s, and this picture was taken in 1905. In the early 1900s, they were passing their clothing around and having people taken pictures taken of different people wearing the same outfits. This is another example of a chief. This one is from a different clan called the Cluckhan clan. This was taken in 1904. Then the final picture I'd like to mention here is a different guy, different tribe, different group of Indians. This is a gentleman who I can't pronounce his last name. It begins with an A. It is a great big long thing, but he was a fairly famous member of the Inupiaq, actually the Yupik Indian group in Nome, Alaska. He originally came from Little Diomede Island, which is up in the farther up in the Bering Straits, but he settled in Nome, Alaska back when it was just beginning in the late 1890s. And he undertook the business of carving walrus tusks. And he's wearing here a traditional raincoat made of the intestines of seals and walruses. That's what this waterproof raincoat is. And he's holding a walrus tusk that he has partially carved into a cribbage board. And he's holding a crooked knife here, which is used to carve. And this guy was very famous because he was a master carver, and he did a lot of very, very elegant carvings of cribbage boards and other things. And he was known to people far and wide as Happy Jack. So this is Happy Jack, the very famous Eskimo carver. He, as I said, came from one of the islands, Little Diomede Island, up in the Bering Straits, and settled in Nome, Alaska in the early or late 1890s. And then he died in 1918 in the Spanish flu epidemic. So he didn't live that long, but he was his carvings today are sought after and really treasured by collectors and sell for a lot of money. So that's Happy Jack.